Yeah, so Tom Quinn's released this really kind of humorous book in a way, talking about, the lives of the staff at the palaces. What is it really like being, a maid or a butler to a member of the royal family? And unsurprisingly, some of the kind of craziest stuff in there was about the staff who work for the Duke of York.
If you think Prince Andrew was quietly going to ride out his scandal inside Royal Lodge, this video is going to shock you. Because by the end of this, you're going to know 3 things the public was never supposed to hear. The real reason the crown finally forced him out, what staff inside the house actually endured for years, and why Sarah Ferguson and even Beatrice and Eugenie have now been pushed into a corner. Stay with me, because the teddy bear story you've heard? That was just the surface. The truth is this. The only reason Andrew has been able to cling to Royal Lodge for so long is because of his lease. Buried in the terms is a simple clause: as long as he maintains the property, pays for repairs, renovations, and keeps it in good condition, he's technically fulfilling the agreement. That made it incredibly hard for the palace to evict him, even after he was stripped of military titles, honors, and public duties. On paper, he was protected. But behind those gates, staff say it was a completely different world. People who worked for Andrew and Sarah at Royal Lodge describe a household that was tense, joyless, and run on fear. Not the polished, smiling, we're still a family image they gave in interviews. Former employees say Andrew was one of the hardest royals to work for, impatient, entitled, and ready to explode over the smallest detail. One former maid said that while most senior royals were strict but respectful, Andrew was the one person they were actually afraid of. A curtain pulled too far. A breakfast tray half an inch off. Shoes not lined up. Any of it could trigger a public dressing down. You could hear him before you saw him. That's how bad it was. And this wasn't just staff gossip. Even protection officers noticed it, the shouting, the entitlement, the do-it-my-way attitude. Inside the royal system, everyone follows protocol. But Andrew? He had his own rules. Much stricter, much pettier. And then there's the part that always sounds like a joke until you realize staff were actually trained on it: the teddy bears. Multiple insiders have said Andrew owned dozens of stuffed toys. Some say 40, others say over 70, many dressed in sailor outfits and uniforms. Every single morning, palace staff had to arrange them on his bed in a very specific order, from biggest to smallest. If even one was out of place, he could go off. There was an actual laminated diagram kept nearby to show the exact formation. One guard said it looked more like a military battle map than a bedroom layout. New staff even had to be taught the bear routine. Every evening, the toys were moved back to their evening positions, including a group that was placed in the fireplace, not burning, just displayed. To anyone on the outside, it's eccentric. To people working there, it was a symbol of how controlling he was about everything in his environment. The house, according to one insider, felt more like a barracks than a home. Rules for how shirts were folded, rules for how breakfast was presented, rules for how to address him. And if you got it wrong, you'd be humiliated in front of everyone. You're here to serve, not to speak. That's how one former member of staff described his attitude. Even senior royal aides admitted privately that of all the households, Andrew's was the one nobody wanted to be assigned to. And all of that would have stayed inside the walls if his royal safety net hadn't finally been cut. Because now, with the king tightening the circle, those stories land differently. Buckingham Palace has made it clear, the era of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor having a grand royal residence while doing nothing for the crown is over. The king has begun a formal process to remove him from Royal Lodge and, crucially, remove what was left of his royal styling. Not Prince Andrew, Duke of York. Just Andrew. That is a public downgrade. That is his brother saying, you don't get to hide behind the title anymore. And once the title goes, the grace and favor lifestyle goes with it. That's why the living situation suddenly matters. Because Royal Lodge wasn't just Andrew's home, it was Sarah Ferguson's safety net too. After the divorce, she stayed. Not as a royal, but as something in between. Friendly with the late queen. Close to Andrew. Useful to the family, sometimes. Embarrassing to the family other times. But as long as Andrew stayed in that house, she had a roof in Windsor. That's why people around her say she is quietly devastated now. She even sold her £4 million home earlier this year, reportedly believing she'd be able to go on living at Royal Lodge. Then the rug got pulled. With Andrew's lease effectively revoked and the king insisting he relocate, reportedly to a smaller property on the Sandringham estate, Sarah is not invited to follow. After nearly 2 decades of living like a semi-royal, she now has to make her own arrangements. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. People who worked there say Sarah could be warm, funny and genuinely kind on good days, but also high-strung and unpredictable when she was under pressure. There's at least one report of her reducing a staff member to tears over a small issue. But those same insiders say she was often the only one who could calm Andrew down after one of his blow-ups. She'd step in, defuse him, smooth it over. That's part of why the late queen kept a soft spot for her. She could manage him. That odd, post-divorce alliance is actually what kept that house functioning. Two ex-spouses, same roof, same estate, same habits. Not romantic, but codependent. Now that structure is gone. And when the structure goes, the stories start coming out. And what about Beatrice and Eugenie? They've seen all of this. They know the headlines. They know how bad the public perception is. According to royal sources, both sisters have slowly stepped away from the drama. Eugenie has been spending more time in Portugal, where her husband works in luxury property. Beatrice is splitting her time between the US and Europe. Not because they hate their parents, because they don't want to go down with them. They have young families now. They don't want to be photographed walking into a house their father has just been evicted from. They don't want to be dragged back into the conversation every time Andrew's name trends. That tells you everything. When grown daughters start building lives abroad while their father is being pushed out of the Windsor estate, it's because they know the situation is only going one way. And here's the bigger takeaway. Andrew's downfall isn't just about one scandal years ago. It's about a pattern, arrogance, refusal to change, treating staff badly, clinging to privilege, assuming the crown would always protect him. For a long time, it did. But this king has made it clear. The monarchy survives, not the individuals. Sarah now has to decide. Does she reinvent herself outside royal circles, again? Or does she fade quietly out of view? Andrew is being sent to a smaller house, stripped of styling, removed from the royal frontline. The daughters have stepped back. The staff have spoken. And Royal Lodge, once a symbol of quiet royal comfort, is now a symbol of decline. So, what does this all tell us? That behind the velvet ropes and balcony waves, there were people living in fear of teddy bear charts. That a prince who thought he was untouchable is finally being told to pack. And that the House of York, Andrew, Sarah, Beatrice, Eugenie, is no longer moving as a unit. It's splintering. One to Norfolk, one to Portugal, one between continents, and one, for the first time in years, with nowhere in Windsor to call home. Tell me in the comments, do you think this is justice finally catching up to him, or is this the palace trying to erase an embarrassment? And if you want more uncensored breakdowns of what really happens behind those royal walls, make sure you're subscribed, because this is only the beginning.